We continue now at the top of Daf Chavdalad Amud Aleph from Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 24a. This daf is sponsored by Yoni Zigdansky in memory of Peretz Yisrael ben Yoel Meir. May his neshama have an aliyah. And the previous summit, we're darshaning the psukim by the Trumas Hadeshin. There's an extra word Yilbash, and Rebbe says the word Yilbash is L'rabos es hashechakim. It comes to include worn-out clothing. Rashi over here says L'rabos shechakim sheksherin l'chol avoda. Even worn-out clothing are kosher for any avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. Uvilvad shelo yehu mikurai, and as long as those clothing are not torn. And the Gemara continues with a related brisa, v'hinicham sham, by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. It says that he takes off the clothing and he places them over there. Melamed shetu'unin geniza. So the Tanakam of the brisa says this shows us that the clothing the Kohen Gadol wears on Yom Kippur have to be stored away, never to be used again. Rabbi Dosa Omer, Rabbi Dosa says, Ru'uyin hein lekohen hedyot. Really, these begadim could be used for a Kohen hedyot. Why does the pasuk say he has to place it over there? The idea is these clothing should not be used on another Yom Kippur. And now the Gemara returns to its original reason why it brought these brises. My love is it not b'hakam iflagi that they're arguing in the following: the Mar Savar Avoda, he one holds the Trumas Hadeshin is an Avoda. Umar Savar Lav Avoda, he in the other opinion says Trumas Hadeshin is not an Avoda. And Rashi over here explains, my love, Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Dosa b'ha pligi. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Dosa are arguing in this exact machlokus. This was a machlokus Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish on the previous Amud. The Rabbi Yehuda, the Darish, Yilbash Lavi Mitznefes v'Yavneit. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the word Yilbash comes to include the Mitznefes and the Avneit, because again, by the Trumas Hadeshin, it only mentions two of the begadim. How do you know you have to wear all four begadim? He learns that out from Yilbash. Savar Avoda, so he holds it as an Avoda. Uboy Mitznefes v'Yavneit. That's why it's required to wear the Mitznefes v'Yavneit, meaning it's required to wear all four begadim. Rabbi Dosa Savar, Rabbi Dosa holds Lav Avoda, it's not an Avoda. V'loboy Mitznefes v'Yavneit, you don't need the Mitznefes v'Yavneit, that's why you only need to wear two of the begadim. That's exactly the same machlokus. So the Gemara says, Lo no dekuli alma Avoda, it could be everybody agrees it is an Avoda, the Trumas Hadeshin. V'hacha b'hakam iflagi, and here the machlokus is as follows. Mar Savar tzricha krol rebuye. One says you need a pasuk, meaning you need an extra word in the pasuk to include these additional garments. Umar Savar lo tzricha krol rebuye. One says it's obvious. You don't even need a pasuk to include the two garments. Of course, you have to wear all four garments. Rashi over here says tzricha krol rebuye. The lo tema hani dafka. Don't say wear only the two of the four begadim. Ulememer de lav avoda. Maybe you'll think it's not an avoda. So comes the pasuk to tell us you have to wear all four. Umar Savar lo tzricha rebuye la mikra. The other one says you don't need a hepsukim to include this. The kaven the goli ba ksones bad kodesh yilba bad kodesh u'michnasei kodesh. Once it says he's got to wear the ksones. Once it says he has to wear the michnasayim. Ashmein and avodi. Then it's clear it's an avoda. Uboy kulu. Of course you have to wear all four begadim. V'chiyasa kral rebuye lebigdei Yom Kippurim masa. So what's the pasuk coming for? It's coming for the drasha regarding the bigdei Yom Kippurim. The Gemara continues. Boy Rabavin asks the following question: Trumas Hadeshin bekama. How much do you have to take when you take the ashes off the mizbeach? For the Trumas Hadeshin, how much do you have to take? Mitrumas Meiser Yalfinallah, do we learn it out from Trumas Meiser? Or Mitrumas Midyon Yalfinallah, or do we learn it out from Trumas Midyon? Rashi over here says, Mitrumas Meiser Yalfinallah daha v'heirim ksiv. It says v'heirim by Trumas Hadeshin. Lashon v'harei mosa mimenu. That's the same language that's used by Trumas Meiser. V'havi b'omed echad me'asar. That would be 1/10. B'deshan ha'maracha of the ashes that are on the maracha. Now the Mesoras Hashas changes it to Echad Mimeya, 1 out of 100, because Trumas Meiser is 1/10 of Meiser, and Meiser is 1/10. So 1/10 of 1/10 is actually 1/100th. O mitrumas midyon dichsiv haremosa meches lashem echad nefesh mechamesh hameos. It says by the Trumas Midyon, it says that they took 1/500th. So then we learn out from there that the Trumas Hadeshin has to be 1/500th. That's the question of Rabbi Avin. So the Gemara says Tashma come in here. The Tani Rabbi Chia, because Rabbi Chia taught in the Brisa, Nemar kan veherim. It says over here the word veherim, v'nemar lahalon veherim, and it says over there the word veherim, malahalon bekumtso, afkan bekumtso. Just like over there it's a fistful, so too over here it's one fistful of ashes. Rashi over here says Tashma de meharamas kometz yalfinallah. We learn it out from the lifting of the kometz. It says lo yifchos me'omen melala kometz, so we learn out that it can't be less than a fistful. V'yimratz lahos of Yosef. Rashi says if you want to do more than a fistful, that's fine. The halekalamim are dafka kamer. We don't mean you actually take a fistful. The halo efshar lifshod beremetz gecholim roschos likmos. You're not going to be able to take a fistful of burning hot ashes, literally speaking. So therefore, it's a measurement. You have to take at least a kometz. You can take more. And the Gemara continues. Amar Rav. Rav says, Arba avodos zor chayiv alein misa. There are 4 avodos that if a zor, if a non-kohen does them, he's chayiv misa. They are zrika, the throwing or the sprinkling of the blood, v'aktara, burning things on the mizbeach, v'nisach hamayim, the pouring of the water, the libation of the water, v'nisach hayayin, and the wine libations. The Levi Amar af Trumas Hadeshin, and Levi says even if a Zar does the Trumas Hadeshin, also chayiv misa. V'chein tani Levi b'masnise, Levi also taught this in a brisa, af Trumas Hadeshin, the same is true by the Trumas Hadeshin. Rashi over here says, Arbo avodos afal bishakulon muzar alein Zar, even though a Zar is warned not to do any avodos, ein chayiv misa ela ba'arbo ha'elu k'dim afarish v'yazal. The chayiv misa only applies to these four, as we're going to be explaining from Sukkim. So the Gemara now says, my time of the Rav. What's the reason of Rav? In other words, what's the reason of Rav why we exclude Trumas Hadeshin? Because the pasuk says, "V'yatov v'necho yitzcha tishmru es kunaschem l'chol dvar hamizbeach u'mibeis laparoches v'avadetem avodas matana etein es kunaschem v'azar hakorev yumas." Pasuk here at the end says that the non-Kohen who does the avoda will die, and it talks about dvar hamizbeach, all these various avodos, and so Rav darshans as follows: Avodas matana. The language of the pasuk is you do an avoda of giving, v'lo avoda siluk, not an avoda of taking away. In other words, the Trumas Hadeshin is an avoda of removing from the mizbeach, not putting on the mizbeach. Therefore, that's excluded. There's no chiv misa. V'avadetem, and it also says avadetem, avoda tama, it means a complete avoda. V'lo avoda sheyesh achareho avoda, not an avoda where there's an avoda that follows, and we'll see that in Rashi. Rashi over here says, avodas matana, shatanosin al mizbeach. We're only talking about avodas where you put something on the mizbeach. V'lo avodas siluk, not when you remove from the mizbeach. Shatomesalik v'sor me'al mizbeach kagon Trumas Hadeshin. For example, the Trumas Hadeshin you're removing from the mizbeach. And avoda tama, what does that mean? Avoda shi gomeres u'metamemes as hadover. It means a finishing avoda. V'lo sheyesh acharei avoda, not something where you're still going to do more. For example, you shech the animal, then you have to receive the blood, then you have to walk over the blood. All of those are not complete. Zerika, the final avoda there is zerika, to throw the blood, to sprinkle the blood. But zerika is the final avoda you do with the blood. The same thing is true by burning things. Let's say you're burning the kometz of the karban mincha, or you're burning the evarim or the pedarim, you're burning the various limbs on the mizbeach. Those are final avodas. They would pour wine, the wine libations all year. And the water libation that they did on Sukkot. All of those are final avodas, and therefore it's included in the Chiyav Misa. And so the Gemara says, V'Levi, how does Levi respond to this? How does he come to include something like the Trumas Hadeshin? The answer is, Rabbi Rachmana l'chol dvar hamizbeach. Pasuk doesn't need to say l'chol dvar hamizbeach, that's an extra phrase. That phrase comes to include even the Trumas Hadeshin. Rashi says, L'chol dvar hamizbeach l'rabos avoda siluk. To include if you do a removal type of avoda. Im avoda tami, if that's a concluding avoda, could go in Trumas Hadeshin. For example, Trumas Hadeshin, so Levi learns it out from l'chol dvar hamizbeach. V'Rav, so what does Rav do with the phrase l'chol dvar hamizbeach? Hahula suye sheva hazo shebifnim v'shebemitzora. That includes 7 sprinklings that take place inside the heichal and the sprinkling of the mitzora. That also, if the Zar does it, it's going to be a chiyuv misa. Rashi says, Sheva hazo shebifnim shemaz ala paroches. In these cases, you sprinkle on the paroches, mipar helam dover, that's from the par helam dover, a particular carbon, upar mashiach, v'shal yom kippurim, these are carbonis. V'shebe mitzora, and also there's also some sprinkling by the mitzora, shemazah milug shemen behechol. You sprinkle from the oil in the heichal, like it says, v'hizam in hashemen betzbo v'gomer. The salka daita chamina, what's the idea? Because I might have thought, lav devar hamizbeach, all of these sprinklings are not happening by the mizbeach, they're happening inside the heichal. Lahachi Rabbi Lachol, that's what the Lachol Dvar HaMizbeach is coming to teach us. It's coming to teach us that the halach of Hazar HaKarev Yumas, that if the Zar does the avoda, he's going to die, applies to these as well, even though they're not by the Mizbeach itself. That's learned out from the Lachol Dvar HaMizbeach. V'Levi, so what does Levi say about that? Nafkole midvar v'chol dvar. Levi says you can learn 2 things from Lachol Dvar HaMizbeach, because number 1, the whole phrase Lachol Dvar HaMizbeach is extra, plus it could just say Dvar HaMizbeach. It doesn't have to say Kol Dvar HaMizbeach. So you learn out both the Hazol Shebifnim, and you learn out what we learned out in terms of the Trumas Hadeshin. Rashi says, Kulu minei midvar l'chol dvar. Learns it all out from there. Da Dvar HaMizbeach gufa yiseru. The phrase Dvar HaMizbeach itself is extra. V'nigmar minei Trumas Hadeshin. That teaches us Trumas Hadeshin. Umei ribuya de l'chol. And then they add the word l'chol Dvar HaMizbeach. Darish be Hazah HaPnimis. That's from there we learn out the Hazah HaPnimis, the inner sprinklings. And the Gemara says, V'Rav, so what does Rav do with Dvar l'chol Dvar? Dvar v'chol Dvar lo Darish. He doesn't darshan any difference between Dvar and Kol Dvar. In other words, he only learns out one thing from l'chol Dvar HaMizbeach. He learns out the Sheva Hazah Shebifnim, v'Sheva Mitzora. So the Gemara now asks on Levi's position. V'yemu l'chol devar mizbeach klal avodas matana prat. Why don't we say l'chol devar mizbeach is a klal? It's a general idea, and avodas matana is a prat. So it shouldn't come to include. On the contrary, klalu prat. When you have a klal followed by a prat, ein bichlal ala masha b'prat. The rule is you only include that which was specified. Avodas matana in avodas siluk lo, and that would mean only avodas matana there's a chiyuv misa, and not avodas siluk. On the contrary, it should exclude trumas hadeshin. So the Gemara says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Dalid Amud Beis.